John Cooper to discuss violence prevention and policing reforms. We'll hear from Chief Drake after we hear from Mayor Cooper, and then we'll take your questions. Now, please help me welcome Nashville and Davidson County's Mayor, John Cooper.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by thanking Chief John Drake for joining me today. Today marks the end of Chief Drake's second month on the job, and that's been an eventful 2 months for Nashville and our police department. Last week, the chief shared an update with our Policing Policy Commission, and in the update, he provided a detailed account of how the department is implementing recommendations that the commission helped identify as immediate priorities. Now, this report is available on the MNPD website, and there will be more updates to come. And I want to applaud Chief Drake for his commitment to transparency and accountability. Now, today brings another update on how the department is meeting the challenge of gun violence. As gun violence has increased nationwide, it has also increased here in Nashville. In 2020, our community had 98 gun homicides, and that's up from 62 a year ago. Non-fatal gunshot injuries were up 26%. Now, we are doing better than most. Where other cities saw homicide increases of 40% or higher, our increase was under 30%, but that number is still too high. Today, the department is taking steps to reduce violent crime by redeploying 80 officers to precincts across the county. The goal is to keep our neighborhoods safe by having officers on the street between 5 p.m. and 3:30 a.m. when most crimes occur. The new Central Homicide Unit is also continuing to make progress. Last year, our homicide clearance rate fell to just 46%. But by creating a new Central Homicide Unit, Chief Drake is looking to boost that clearance rate dramatically. Now, making our community safe isn't just a job for the police. Neighborhood associations, businesses, community groups, violence interrupters, nonprofits all have an important role to play. The MNPD is creating a new platform to work with those groups, a new Office of Alternative Policing Strategy. That office will be headed by Inspector David Imhoff, who currently leads these precincts. Now, I'm grateful to our police officers and to every department, community group, and nonprofit working hard to make Nashville safer for everyone. And Chief Drake, I would like to turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cooper, and good afternoon. First, I want to again thank the Policing Policy Commission for its work. We have reported back on short-term priorities identified by the Commission, and that full detail is on our website. We'll continue to provide updates as our work on the Commission recommendations continue. While the coronavirus pandemic has impacted the lives of virtually all Nashvillians, as well as our institutions, it has not curtailed violence, especially gun crime, here or in cities across America. Some cities, including Seattle, New Orleans, Atlanta, Chicago, Boston, and Portland, saw murders increase from 2019 to 2020 by 50 to 70%. Here in Nashville, the increase from 84 victims to 109 and is just under 30%. That is absolutely unacceptable. We in the police department never forget that these persons had family members and friends who continue to mourn as we work to bring them closure. Since I was appointed to lead the Metropolitan Police Department at the end of November, we have been repurposing some of our limited resources to build stronger relationships in Nashville's diverse communities. Officers in our new Office of Community Engagement and Partnerships hit the ground running and are already doing work in the Latino, Kurdish, and African American communities. Community engagement officers assigned to the precincts are also building relationships in neighborhoods. Today, I'm announcing a continued repurposing of our resources to deter and reduce crimes of violence, both through enforcement measures and intervention in the lives of young persons before their troublesome behavior becomes a pattern. First, I want to speak with you about enforcement and investigative measures directed at violent crime. Beginning this week, the police department is significantly enhancing the visibility of patrol officers across the 8 precincts through a new shift. This detail at each precinct will consist of 9 officers and 1 sergeant, a total of 80 personnel who will work from 5 p.m. until 3:30 a.m., the hours during which most violent crime occurs. These officers will provide additional visibility in areas with emerging crime trends through a precision policing model. For example, the shootout between two groups that occurred at Murfreesboro Pike and Millwood Drive earlier this month, and gunfire by one individual at that same intersection in September. The individual from September was arrested. We are making good progress in identifying those involved in last month's shooting. Nevertheless, it is clear that Murfreesboro Pike and Millwood Drive should and will be the focus of Hermitage Precinct's new shift of officers. Those working this new enhanced shift will also be available to assist regular evening and overnight patrol officers with responding to calls for service during the busiest times so that we can get people to people more quickly. They will also concentrate on responding in numbers to violent crime calls such as shootings, robberies, to immediately assist in identifying and apprehending suspects. These teams across the 8 precincts will be an important part of public safety mission, even as our manpower increases next month and in August through the graduation of 2 academy classes. Also, the 53 police officers who graduated from the academy last August are about to complete their 6-month probationary period and begin policing by themselves, also adding to our visibility on the streets. The move to the new patrol shift will complement other changes already in place to identify and apprehend responsible for gun crimes in our city persons. As you know, in October, we instituted a 29-member centralized homicide unit to replace the 15-year practice of basing homicide investigations at the precinct level. The homicide unit is doing good work and has leads in all but 3 murder cases since last October. In December, to supplement the work of the homicide unit and to add additional resources to identify gun criminals, I asked that 6 Titan teams be created in the Specialized Investigations Division. Their acronym stands for the Investigation Team Addressing Neighborhood Shootings. Each of the 6 Titan teams is made of 7 members and were formed through a repurposing of gang unit, detectives, and juvenile crime task force officers. Titan detectives now respond to scenes of murders and critical shootings and work to develop intelligence on persons responsible for their motives and who their friends and affiliates may be. Quite simply, we have focused more resources responding to the scenes of homicides and serious gun crimes than ever before in an effort to arrest those responsible. It was the work of a Titans group that led to the January 12th apprehension of Caitlin Kaufman, suspect James Cowan. The Specialized Investigations Division continues to use the microscopic analysis of shell casings recovered from shootings scenes to connect same guns and potentially the same people to shootings in other parts of Nashville and in some cases outside Davidson County. Our partnership with federal ATF agents is a critical part of this work. While enforcement is a critical part of our mission to keep Nashville safe, also critical is the obligation of all of us to do all we can to prevent violent behavior. Today, I'm announcing the creation of the Police Department's first ever Office of Alternative Policing Strategies. Commander David Amhoff, a 28-year veteran who has led operations at the East Precinct for the past 10 years, and who recently received his master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, will head this new office. He has been appointed to the newly ranked inspector. Inspector Amhoff will work with Mayor Cooper's office, juvenile court clergy, mental health providers, nonprofits, and others. The goal is to refine ways for all of us to meaningfully intervene in the lives of young people and those in vulnerable populations whose illegal infractions are indicative of becoming more serious. Inspector Amhoff will be developing parameters for his new assignment in the coming weeks. He will be talking with a lot of people, both locally and nationally, to get the Office of Alternative Policing Strategies up and running. Years ago, people in law enforcement, not only here, but in most places, men said that mentoring work or intervention was not part of the job. I've long thought that police officers can play a special role in this area. David Amhoff is excited for this challenge, and I am excited for him. Finally, I close by thanking all of the Nashville, for your support for the men and women of our police department. We're truly grateful.
You've heard from Chief Drake, and before that, Mayor John Cooper. Let's turn now to take your questions, starting with Samantha Mack. Samantha, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, thank you both so much for your time. I have two questions. The first is, could you provide an update on the After Action Review Committee related to the bombing? And then the second question, the police department has told me that the officers involved in the shooting last week were part of a community field intelligence team. Can you talk about what that team is and, you know, how widespread at the different precincts it is? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. So for the first question, the After Action Review, that team has met twice already and will be meeting in the weeks to come, and will be forwarding a report at the conclusion of their investigation. And once that is concluded, that will be made public as we continue to be transparent in all of efforts within the police department. Our CFIT teams, or Community Field Intelligence, was where we pulled our crime suppression teams, which was a proactive measure that would go in and saturate neighborhoods and et cetera, but we changed that into Community Field Intelligence. And those teams go out, develop intelligence, and a do no harm approach to communities, identifying problem people and problem areas, and then trying to make an arrest or do some type of intervention. All of the precincts have a Community Field Intelligence team that was newly implemented within the last few weeks.
That was Samantha Max. Thank you, Samantha. Let's take a question now from Levi at News 5. Levi, go ahead with your question.
Thank you guys so much. First and foremost, I just want to ask, you know, in terms of this meeting itself, can you tell us about any of the programs that you felt may have been outdated that really needed to, you know, what really needed this type of meeting or needed this type of intervention to try and limit the number of violent crimes?
So when you speak of violent crime, you look at, it takes a community approach. It takes not only the police department, but it takes all our members of our community to identify problems that are occurring, people in areas. It's hard for us to go into a neighborhood and tell you what's wrong, but it's easier for you to tell us. And when you tell us that there's problems in the community, there's a person that's creating those problems, then we can address that. We've been arresting people for years, and those same people continue to go down a path to more crime. But looking at creating this office, we can actually reduce that by having interventions. And we can let people know that we're not only trying to react to crime, but prevent it from happening. And I think this is a good approach, and it's going to take us a long way to reducing the violence.
So, Levi, if I can just make a comment, and I want to thank the chief for strong moves in 3 areas: solving crime, having a higher clearance rate, preventing crime by redeploying officers tactically to reduce the rate of crime, and then a long-term strategy for violence prevention, which I think may be the most important in the long term. But all 3 are going to be important in solving Nashville's violence problem, which we have to recognize today is unacceptable.
Thank you, Levi, for that question. Let's move on to a question from Yihan Najong with the Tennessean. Yihan, please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. Question for Chief Drake. Can you provide some more details about what this new Office of Alternative Policing strategy will do, and how that kind of differs from the current strategy of the department and exactly what they'll be doing? And for Mayor Cooper, if he can talk about how he's going to measure the progress on this front and also the other measures and recommendations as part of the Policing Commission report. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. What Inspector Amhoff would do is that he'll pull together different members of the community, different stakeholders in a process that we haven't used before, not just making an arrest and moving on to the next, but looking at group intervention, group violence intervention to say, and to identify people that are going down a path, adults, and to try to connect them to services, or we have to make the arrest. Also, we identify juvenile crime individuals who are headed down a path, sometimes where they can't turn back, and we can connect them to services as well. There are a lot of groups, advocates, and et cetera, that we feel that by connecting them, then we can prevent a life of crime, and that's the new approach that we're looking to do.
Well, and thank you, Ihan. In terms of measuring progress, which is extremely important, unfortunately, crime is very quantifiable. I mean, on a weekly basis, the crime numbers are reported in every precinct and really every neighborhood. Our job is to match effective strategies with results. So we're having the data. We know that we're in a problem right now with this increased numbers. Match strategies with results and keep working the problem until our violence rate declines.
We have time now for 2 more questions. I'd like to go first to Kathleen Siri. Kathleen, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, thank you so much for taking our questions today. So I was hoping that Chief Drake could give us an update on the deployment of body cameras to Metro's officers. Do you expect to have every officer equipped with a body camera by July, and kind of talk about the importance of this? I know it was definitely a discussion after the Nashville bombing, or the Christmas Day bombing rather, where there was only one officer who had a body camera downtown. Thank you.
Yeah, so our body-worn camera program is going well. We've equipped several precincts already, and we expect to have all of our officers totally equipped with body cam and in-car cameras by September.
Last question of the day goes to Adam Tamburin at the Tennessean. Adam, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hi, Chief. You mentioned the limited resources in the police department and redeploying officers from the juvenile task force and the gangs unit. Can you talk a little bit about, have you eliminated those units? Do they still exist in some form, or have there been police operations or units or teams that you have said these aren't working and we're going to disband them?
Thank you for that question, Adam. And yes, we did eliminate some of those groups. They were mainly proactive teams that some people thought led to over-policing in neighborhoods. And so we wanted to have a do-no-harm approach and having a precision policing, identifying problem people in problem areas. And so we pulled these teams together, one, to have community engagement, to get to know people, let them get to know us, but then also where we can have communications and rapport to not only react to violent crime, but to try to prevent it. And so by having those communications with neighborhoods, then we can move forward with our way of reducing violent crime, but also just having that connection and collaboration, I think is good. We moved away from the old units that we had. We made these new ones, all in the effort, I think, is going to be 21st century policing at its best, which is my goal, to be identified as one of the best police departments in the country. And I think this is going to be a best practice.
Nashville, thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. A reminder, Mayor Cooper will be with Dr. Battle later this afternoon for another news conference, and he'll be back with you on Thursday for his weekly online COVID-19 briefing. Until then, take care, stay safe.